Hey there, my name is Cole Adams, and you are watching the best college basketball podcast out there that covers the entire sport of college basketball, brackets, bubbles, and bid stealers. Now, here are your hosts, Sam Fetterman and Jonathan Lidskin.
Season 6, episode 62 of Brackets, Bubbles, and Bid Stealers. I am Sam Fetterman. Jonathan Lidskin is not with me tonight. Nobody is with me tonight. This is a solo pod, Brackets, Bubbles, and Bid Stealers. I can't tell you the last time we had one of those, if we've ever had one of those on this show, but I felt the need to kind of come out, and Jonathan was going to be here. He hasn't responded to a text in an hour, so I don't know what happened to him. He might be a dead body. We might have lost Jonathan at some point over the last hour. Hopefully we didn't. Hopefully we'll be back. We will be back Sunday morning around 9 Eastern for an exclusively mid-major podcast episode where we will be talking about a lot of different mid-majors and kind of where we stand on them, because we haven't gotten to a ton of those this year. And I know that's something that I wanted to get into at some point, especially that. And then over the next couple of weeks, we will have an SEC roundup coming up, heading into conference play. That's going to be a pod that's going to go along with, we're going to talk about some of the other high major conferences as well. Christmas break always gives you a good time to be able to reset. We might have some high school content. I'll be going to Jordan Holiday Classic on the 27th. I'll also be going to a whole bunch of college games, obviously, before the new year, after the new year, all year long. That's what I do. That's where I am. I was at Sacred Heart this morning. I will be in Brooklyn for 2 women's games this afternoon. And then I will be at the Madison Square Garden for Duke, Texas Tech. We'll talk a little bit about Texas Tech in a bit. But where I want to open today is we're just going to kind of go through everything that's happened since the last pod. Let's start UConn and Texas. I was there in the building at the XL Center last Friday. UConn has since played. They also beat Butler on Tuesday, 79-60. UConn now 11-1, going into a stretch where they play 5 straight games against teams outside of Ken Palm's top 75. They do not play against a team inside Ken Palm's top 75 until Seton Hall on January 13th, which you can really already chalk up as a loss because it's going to be at the Prudential Center, and Dan Hurley never wins there. But the Huskies are now up to the number 4 defense in the country, the number 21 offense. And it's a little bit striking to watch this offense kind of just not click for most of the game. But they're getting good looks. I don't think the problem is the looks that they're getting. I think there's a bunch of turnovers for sure right now. But I also just kind of think that they're not really settled as shooters. Solo ball is still struggling for the most part. Obviously, he had a big game on Tuesday, but I was there last week, and he needed the big 3 at the end, the one from the People's Bank Arena logo, for him to really even have anything going for him on that night. And then Caravan comes through with the big shot when he gets it. He's shooting 43% this year. He's kind of one of the guys that's not struggling from deep. But one of my main takeaways from this game was how Braylon Mullins responds when he's knocked down. And we talked about this after Florida and the Jimmy V Classic. But to me, Braylon Mullins has no business kind of taking the types of shots that he's able to not just take, but make. As a freshman in this UConn offense who jumped in mid-season, didn't get the bye games to kind of warm up. He was thrown in Illinois, Kansas, got 1 bye game, Florida, Texas, Butler. And he's stepping in and he's hitting a ton of really difficult shots, fadeaways. He's keeping the offense moving. He was huge in the first half against Texas. Hit a couple threes. They ran a couple good actions for him. But Hurley also said that they haven't gotten to running as much as they want to for him. And I think that's one of the very interesting things about UConn is right now they're running so much for the post. They're running so much for Solo. They're running so much for Alex that, eventually they're going to have to start running stuff more for Mullins, more for Stewart. And we'll kind of see those guys kind of tick up further as the course of the season goes. And that's when solo ball is going to start hitting his shots. When they're not trying to force feed him, that's when they're going to get great production from everybody. And I think that the UConn is still far from their peak, but they might be the best team in the country when it's all said and done, because we've seen Dan Hurley be the coach of a dominant college basketball team, obviously. Okay, Michigan is obviously on a tier above everyone else right now. Michigan and Arizona and Duke and Iowa State are the top four right now. You can't really debate that in my eyes. But UConn only loss came down 2 starters at by 4 points to Arizona. If they'd made 1 or 2 more plays in that game, they would probably be the unanimous number 1 team in the AP poll right now, considering that Arizona is number 1 over Michigan, and UConn would have had that win. I also do kind of think that Arizona beating UConn kind of holds a lot of weight on Arizona's resume right now, and it's not as it absolutely should. It's one of the best wins in the country. Don't think it's a better win than Iowa State going to Purdue and winning by 23. We'll say that. Don't think it's a better win than Michigan beating Gonzaga. Don't think it's a better win than Duke beating Michigan State. But for the most part, I think it's really impressive, obviously, that Arizona was able to grab that one. And then that UConn kind of still not playing their best ball still looks like a team that will eventually be one of the best in the country. Defense for this team is so good right now. They are physical. They force you out of your element. Texas is kind of the perfect type of defense that perfect type of offense that UConn wants to face, because they're already not going to take a ton of threes, and they're already not like a dominant force at the rim. They're so mid-range focused, and UConn's going to eat that alive with their type of ball handler defense, and I think that's huge. But the Huskies in this game, I thought, just kind of had too much energy, too much going for them late. Moving on, let's talk Saturday. Arizona, Alabama. I've stopped holding on to the idea that Arizona has already peaked or has come close to it. And that was kind of the game, because I was a little concerned about, their first couple big wins. Florida was a game that could have gone either way. UCLA was a game that could have gone either way. UConn, with guys injured, was a game that could have gone either way. Florida, there was a moment where I wasn't sure exactly how good they were. UCLA, I'm still not sure how good they are. UConn missing 2 guys, who knows? But the 2 most impressive performances of Arizona's season came on December 6th when they blew out Auburn. That was almost 2 weeks ago now, 97-68, and then 96-75 against Alabama in Birmingham. To me, obviously, you don't need me to tell you how important it is that Braden Berries is finally going for Arizona, playing his best ball of the year. Back-to-back 20-point games. He's scored 15 plus in each of his last 5. And I kind of skirted this off earlier in the season as somebody's going to come back to earth with that as well. But maybe not. Maybe if Koa Pete's obviously not going to score 30 every night like he did against Florida, and maybe he's not the superstar that he looked like on that night, but if he scores 6 points and Arizona scores 96, what does that say about Arizona? What does that say about this team that I think Ivan Karchenkov has been really, really good over the last couple of weeks? I think he's taken a major step forward for this team. I think his development is as important as anybody's, besides maybe Barry's, for this group. Because of how many minutes he's had to play, and I've been impressed. Obviously, Awaka just helps them control the glass, and Krivas is a huge guy. But when I talked about this game with Tate Frazier last week, it was all about how Arizona was kind of a bad paper matchup, but Alabama was the mathematical edge. The math did not matter in this game. Alabama made 12 threes. They shot 38%. Arizona made 10 threes. And that's something that we hadn't seen them do much of over the course of the season. If this is something that now Arizona obviously, they're not going to take 26 threes in every game, but we've now seen them be able to go out and keep pace in a track meet with a team that just wants to throw threes up there. And I think that's really big for what the Wildcats are going to be going forward. Kansas, NC State. Now, we've discussed NC State's bad three-point defense, and something I talked about after the VCU game where I felt like they gave up a ton of open looks. And I don't think that Melvin Council making 9 threes for Kansas is a symptom of that. I think it's an outlier because you're going to let Melvin Council take threes. But it's part of the greater issue now for NC State that, yeah, they're 28th in KenPom, but they don't have marquee power conference wins right now. Obviously, VCU and Boise State are aging particularly well. The Liberty win got you higher in the metrics, so good for them, good for those. But still kind of a little bit concerned about when they run up against high major athleticism. We saw kind of Seton Hall was more athletic than them. Texas just scored a ton of points on them. Auburn was really good in that game. Kansas hit some shots, but again, kind of a miracle win for Kansas in that sense that they needed 9 threes from Melvin Council. Was one of the better interior defense games for NC State. Only 47% inside the arc for Kansas. Thought Lubin played fine. Did not have a problem with him in this game. Williams was good. Again, still a little bit like shocked that Copeland is like the guy for this team. NC State goes out and beats Texas Southern on Wednesday, and Paul McNeil drops 47. Like, whoa. Paul McNeil had 3, 6, 4, and 7 in his last 4 games before that. Then he goes out and drops 47. Paul McNeil, in his previous 5 games, had 40 points. In his previous 6 games, had 50 points. Then he goes out and drops 47 in one game. What a tremendous sport this game of college basketball is. There's nothing like it. NC State's next game will be on Sunday against Mississippi. That's a chance for a power conference win, but it would not be a particularly notable one. Mississippi is probably not going to be a quad 1 opponent for them. I know this is a neutral site semi-home game for NC State. We're keeping an eye on that. Arkansas and Texas Tech. This was a good win for Arkansas, and I'll see Texas Tech tomorrow night. So I want to start with them on this one. 8-3, 27th in KenPom. Man, they have no depth. Like, this is as good of a top 2, and we saw Lawan Watts, what he did against Northern Colorado, 36 points. Maybe as good of a top 3. If Watts can really build off of that and get going. As you'll see anywhere in the sport, between Toppin, Christian Anderson, and then if Watts gets going, Watts. I mean, it's not that he's been really bad. It's just that he struggled in the Purdue game and he struggled in the Arkansas game. But when they're down bodies, like they were down Bamboy, and they are playing 6 guys in December, and Toppin and Anderson have to go the distance. And those 2 guys are the heart and soul of everything. And they should be, because they're awesome. It's just not something that gives me confidence that they're going to be able to stay healthy and stay energized and not be fatigued by the time March comes along. And guys, like, I think it's time to be like legitimately worried about this whole JT Toppin free throw situation. Like, Toppin was not a great free throw shooter at New Mexico, was not a great free throw shooter last year, but got a lot better. It was 68% last year. Series 25 of 55. He was 2 for 7 in this game against Arkansas. 1 for 3 against Northern Colorado, 5 for 12 against Wyoming, 3 for 7 against Purdue, 0 for 3 against New Orleans. Like, just not good free throw shooting this season from JT Toppin. And again, I don't know where that comes from. I don't know how much like I'm allowed to be concerned about it. I still think he's a superstar. He's one of the best 5-ish players in college basketball, maybe even higher than that. But at some point, you have to be ready to sound the alarm bells on, hey, like, this could cost them some games. I mean, they lost by 7. He missed 5 free throws. He makes 3 of those. It's a different ball game coming down the stretch. And also the fact that in this game, there's not enough creation from any of the other guys inside the arc to even get fouls drawn. So it's just Anderson and Toppin are the only 2 guys getting to the line in this game. And I did not think that Arkansas's guards would be as good defensively as they were. But again, a huge shout out to Darius Acuff, who's been awesome. Trayvon Brazile had one of his best games that he's had in years. And I think that's key. But also, again, Arkansas comes out, they make 10 threes on 19 attempts. They get to the line. They win on the glass. They score in the paint. Arkansas is very much a team that I don't know how high their ceiling is. But I do think that they'll come out and they'll give you a game. They'll give you a fight. They've got some physicality to them. They've got some real scorers to them. Kind of come back to me in like 3 weeks once we've seen them take on like Tennessee, Auburn. Yeah, come back to me after they play Vanderbilt on January 20th for kind of a more finished take on Arkansas, because I'm not sure like just how good this team is, what the ceiling is on this group. I could see it being high. I'm not sure. But man, Acuff has been a superstar, and I don't think enough people have talked about that. And I was right just about how good he was going to be. I think that was the best Arkansas looked all year, though, against Texas Tech. They played some of their best ball. And then they dropped 108 on Queens. They've got a big one tomorrow against Houston. I was going to go to that, and then just thought it wouldn't have made sense to try and do both that and Duke Texas Tech. Would rather go to the Garden than the Prudential Center. Nothing against Arkansas or Houston. Would love to cover a Cal Sampson game, but I can't pass up the Garden on a Saturday night near Christmas time. Nebraska, Illinois. Man, Nebraska is just electric. I talked about this a little bit with tape, but 11-0 right now. They're going to be 13-0 going into that Michigan State game on January 2nd. It was a big game winner for Jamarcus Lawrence. Price Sanford was electric. But the thing that I love about Nebraska is the way that they move the ball. It's so good. Just every single possession, it feels like any of the guys on the floor can go out there and make a play. Hoiberg is like kind of evolving into a really, really solid Big Ten point guard. Lawrence, coming back from Rhode Island, I think has taken a step forward in the playmaking department. Sanford is so much more comfortable on the ball, and obviously Rank Most is the type of big man that you really want handle the ball, kind of running through your offense. So I was really impressed with Nebraska's ball movement throughout this game and throughout the season, because I think that that's kind of what gives their offense the go. They're 22nd nationally in assists per field goal. They take a ton of threes there, but they're able to kind of get in the paint with their guys, and I think that's really impressive. Illinois, though, kind of a Creighton-esque defensive profile, with the low turnover, forcing low fouls, and it's kind of you do get that with a little bit of drop from Tomislav's Big Z, who kind of whatever the big situation is. I kind of think Illinois has played a little softer recently, and I don't really like that. This is a team that should be Mirkovic has not played particularly well in a couple of losses. The UConn game, the Nebraska game, just didn't look good in those games. Again, this is a team that I feel like should be built more on its toughness than anything, and they don't feel like that right now. Now, Keaton Wagler, absolutely awesome. Kind of keeping them afloat offensively throughout this game and kind of keeping them in it. And again, Kylan Boswell, terrific player. I do kind of think right now the floor for Illinois is when their guards are their best players. I think when their bigs are their best players, and when their forwards are their best players, that's when Illinois is going to be their best. Because I think at this point we kind of know what their guards are, and they're really, really good. But I don't know if they're best player on a Final Four team good without awesome court play. Not to say that I think the bigs are best player on a Final Four team good necessarily without awesome guard play, but I think that if you kind of get that ceiling, if you get Ivisic, Tomislav playing at his best, if you get Mirkovic playing at his best, Stojakovic, I don't want to put blame on him for this game. He had 19 and 10, but he struggled in the UConn game really badly. I think I'm really waiting for Illinois to put it all together. And I don't know if it'll happen. Their Big Ten early schedule is pretty soft. Maybe they can kind of figure something out before they get to Mackey Arena on January 24th. But we know this team can score. We know that they've got that. I still think there's a ceiling as high as really anybody in the country for the Illini, and I'm just waiting to see it kind of coalesce into that. Kentucky, Indiana, and kind of building that into a more Kentucky-focused thing with they got St. John's coming up tomorrow. They needed that. So Kentucky needed a win on last Saturday, maybe more than any other team has ever needed a win on December 13th in college basketball. And they out-physicaled. They played tough. They didn't turn it over. They played smart. Now, it wasn't an oil painting. They didn't make threes. They didn't make free throws. But they kept Indiana kind of away from what they wanted to do inside the arc. They didn't make a ton of threes. Kind of said, all right, if you're going to try and get there, you're going to go to the line. You're not going to score through us. And for Kentucky, again, to be able to win against a good basketball team when, hey, Otega Owe kind of plays like crap. Aberdeen plays like crap. Chandler plays like crap. They all kind of played like crap. And for them to still get this win, that gives me confidence coming up to saying, hey, you're getting Jaden Quaintance back tomorrow. You're getting one of the best defenders in the country back tomorrow, maybe the best defender in the entire sport. And that changes your ceiling. That changes the way that you can operate on that end, which changes the way that you can operate on the other end, which changes the way that you can throw your lineups out there. And I think that changes the season for Kentucky. I'm not going to come out and say they're going to win the SEC because of it, but I think it's something that they can build off of for sure. And with St. John's, that is a really difficult matchup to start you off with, especially if you're going to be on a little bit of a pitch count, because Zuby, Hopkins, Dylan Mitchell, they're not going to give you an inch in terms of their physicality. Meanwhile, Indiana, I think we've kind of figured out that Indiana is a good basketball team. They are not a great basketball team. And I definitely think they're going to struggle in some of these mucked up physical games where they don't have a talent advantage. Obviously Penn State kind of wants to be able to do that to you, but there's just such a talent advantage that Indiana had in that game that it didn't matter. So I wonder what's going to happen when they play against a Michigan State, when they play against a USC, when they play against some teams that can kind of get a little physical on them. in the Big Ten, and that's one of the things that I'm looking forward to seeing out of Indiana. Still 26th in Ken Palm. I still think this is a good basketball team. I think they'll make the NCAA tournament, but they're coming out of non-conference play without a quad one win, and that's obviously not ideal. But I think you're more than pleased, and you're definitely optimistic that you will build a tournament resume and be a team that wears home whites in the NCAA tournament. I think that's kind of should be where the standard is set for Indiana this season. Wear home whites in the NCAA tournament, and I think that's definitely attainable. 8-3, good metrics. It sets them up to be fine in that spot. Meanwhile, the next game up for Indiana, they play Chicago State tomorrow, then Siena. They open up Big Ten play or resume Big Ten play with Washington at home, and then Maryland, and then Nebraska. I know I'm going over a lot of stuff from last week first. I'll get quickly to some of the stuff from this week as well. I want to talk about Tennessee, Louisville as well. Man, Louisville needs Michael Brown back, but I was listening to Matthew Winnick on the Basket Under Review's Weekend Under Review pod, and I could not agree with him more that Adrian Woolley is kind of the difference maker for this team that kind of takes them, that can elevate their level and can also be their floor raiser on a night where they're not hitting their threes. And he played 34 minutes in this game, and it didn't matter because nobody was hitting their threes, and he wasn't hitting his threes, and Tennessee out physicaled them too. But he's their physical guard. I was watching Sacred Heart today, and this is going to be a bad comparison for most of you guys, but Sacred Heart's kind of similar, where they kind of just go out and they want to throw up threes. Today, their threes weren't going in the first half. Deshaun Gittins was getting in the lane, though. Deshaun Gittins is kind of their get out of jail free guard that's going to be able to get in the lane and get them easy points when things aren't going right. Woolley's the only one of the Louisville guards. Obviously, Hadley can do it a little as well. He's the only one of the four main Louisville guards that's going to get in the lane, and that's so important for them. So many of their and again, another thing Matthew Winnick mentioned was how many of their baskets come off assists and how well Tennessee does at limiting assists. And again, another thing that not having Mikel Brown on the floor completely changes in a game like this. But again, when Jacoby Gillespie is going and Tennessee's defense is humming along like that, Tennessee's going to, especially at Thompson Bowling, Tennessee's a tough team to beat. That's not changing. Tennessee is still going to be a tough team to beat. Just because they're not quite as good as they have been in past years doesn't mean they're not a tough out on a given night. Let's move on and talk some Wednesday action. You got Vanderbilt over Memphis. I actually came out, so I'm gonna kind of put on my Russillo cap here. I actually came away from this game more impressed with Vanderbilt because this was the first time this year that I felt Vanderbilt, and again, they faced it a little bit in some points, but this was, in my eyes, the first time Vanderbilt really faced a ton of adversity this year. They go on the road, they trail in the second half, they blow a lead in the first, and they trail in the second, and they have to kind of win a dogfight where their offense just isn't humming. They're 6 for 31 from three. They're not scoring on the inside. They're playing against an athletic, physical team that's got some older guys on it. I mean, obviously Vanderbilt's not a young team, but Memphis is an older team as well. They want to muck up games. They always show up for big games. That's always been Penny Hardaway's thing. And on a night where Vanderbilt just didn't have it, they still went on the road to a tough environment and got the win. And that is what great teams do. When they don't have it, they can still go on the road and gut out a win. That's where I come away impressed with Vanderbilt. That is where I look at it and say, look, who knows? Vanderbilt is probably not a top 5 team in college basketball. They're undefeated. They're 11-0. They're probably a top 10 team. They're probably not a top 5 team. But how many teams have we seen lose games like that this year? How many good teams have we seen lose games like that? Especially like when you get into conference play and you're playing games on the road. And obviously, I know Memphis isn't a conference game for Vanderbilt, but once you get into conference play and you're going on the road, you're going to see so many teams, so many really good basketball teams kind of drop a game where, hey, maybe they don't have it on a given night. That's a claw back from a second half deficit, and they just don't have enough to get over the line. For Vanderbilt, they did have enough to get over the line. And I think that's what really impressed me. Also, the VCU win, aging well. The SMU win, aging fine. Like, I guess, like, there's nothing wrong with that win. I know they lost to LSU, but they're still 42nd in KenPom. Like, this team has 4 top 50 KenPom wins, 3 of them away from home, and then another top 100 KenPom win in a true road game. So, yeah, maybe they don't have the marquee top 10, top 20 win. They don't have a top 30 win yet. But they have a decent volume of semi-notable at least wins. I would also say beating Lipscomb by 44 is something to know, considering that that's like 20 more than what Duke beat them by, and they gave Duke some trouble. They've turned them over a lot. Obviously, not saying that any of that matters, but Lipscomb's not a bad mid-major team. Vanderbilt, I think their resume is a little more impressive than what people are giving them credit for, to kind of go through that schedule and not have a single blip yet. And they're going to play Wake Forest on the road on Sunday. And again, like, if they can get to 12-0, and they probably will, then if they get to 13-0, you're looking at 13-0 going into SEC play, probably 14-0 going into the Alabama game on January 7th. And to not have a blip in that time, and obviously I'm giving them 3 extra wins here, including 2 road games. Okay, fine. You're 11-0 right now. You've played 4 games against top 50 teams and another road game against number 76 in KenPom, and you won all of them. That's impressive in its own right. It's not Arizona going to UConn and winning against Florida and winning against Alabama and winning against Auburn. It's not that. But I do think that people tend to look at Vanderbilt with a little bit more derision and say, oh, they haven't beaten anybody. I disagree that they haven't beaten anybody. Now, have they beaten an awesome team? No. But they've beaten a lot of quality basketball teams, and most of them not on their own home floor. So I think that's something to know about the Doors. What else do I have coming out of this week of basketball? Today, had some eyes on Seton Hall. Providence also was at Seton Hall last week. Man, this is the last thing I want to discuss on this pod right now. We've got a huge monster game coming up in the Big East on Tuesday. I will be there. Villanova, Seton Hall in Newark at 7 p.m. It's Kevin Willard's return to the Prudential Center for the first time since leaving Seton Hall to be the coach of Maryland. Now he's the coach of Villanova. I imagine it will not be a harsh reception. I would not imagine it is particularly warm, but I would not imagine that it is cold either. I think that there's a lot of respect for what Kevin Willard did with the Seton Hall program, but I also think there's a lot of, hey, like, you're the other guy tonight. Like, our guy is our guy tonight. And Shaheen Holloway is their guy on this given night, and that's going to be represented. Shaheen Holloway now has the Pirates at 11-1. Man, Bud Clark, I wasn't sure how he would translate up. Like, I knew that he would ball. I knew that he would ball. but I didn't realize that he would kind of scale down into a lower usage role, but still be able to control every aspect of the basketball game the way that he does. And I think that's so impressive for him. His evolution from this scoring point guard that can steal the ball, that can play make. Yes, for sure, he can do all of that. But turning that now into this complete point guard that doesn't need to score more than 5 points to be the best player on the floor. That was never his game at Merrimack. He was always having the ball in his hands and always scoring. And there's nothing wrong with that at Merrimack. But now, for what he's doing at Seton Hall, and I want to say, Stephon Payne, for a day that Najee Hines didn't play. And Najee Hines rocks. He's awesome. He's huge. He blocks everything. He's number one in the country in block rate. He rebounds everything. He's super physical. Stephon Payne blocks everything as well. And Stephon Payne rebounded everything in this game. Stephon Payne was everywhere around the paint. Clogged it around. Providence didn't have enough plays to make down the stretch. I thought kind of when Vox gets going, Providence is a different team. But feels like the honeymoon is kind of over with him. He's down to 33% from three on the season. I know the efficiency is still fine, but it's now 2 conference games where he's got like an 85 offensive rating between those two. 6 tier A plus B games, it's a 92 offensive rating. So again, I think he's talented. I think he can really shoot, but I think we're going to have to see more from him if Providence is going to hit their ceiling. And I know that's not really fair to put on a freshman, but that's kind of what this Friars team is, because I think he's that talented and versus where the rest of this team has. And obviously, again, part of that is also Jason Edwards did not have a big game, but Jason Edwards has been awesome throughout the year. I don't think he's the problem in any way. I think it's more what they're getting outside of him at times. And again, Sellers and Edwards have been so good. Vox is kind of that third guy that gives them that extra punch, and we need to see more of that going forward. And I hope we do, because I think Providence needs to be competitive. They're not a lost cause in terms of the metrics right now. They're still 75th in KenPom after this game. So, but they're staring down the barrel of 0-4 in the Big East after playing St. John's and UConn over the next week, and that's really tough. Meanwhile, Seton Hall play a Villanova team. Villanova gets a big win against Wisconsin. Now, Villanova went up 15, blew the lead, went to overtime, and then took over in overtime. That was a really impressive thing to do, because you've got the crowd against you. I know it's not a true road game, but it's in Milwaukee. It's basically a true road game. You've got the whole crowd against you. All the momentum's gone, and boom, you take over the overtime period. So Kevin Willard has Villanova 9-2. He'll take them into Seton Hall to face the 11-1 Pirates in what could be a monster game in the Big East. Two of the teams left in that conference that have legitimate at-large hopes, and not just legitimate at-large hopes, legitimate wear white in the first round hopes. If the season ended today, Seton Hall is probably like a 7 seed. I don't know. And maybe even higher than that, maybe a 5 seed, because I don't know. It's too early to do any bracketology. Anyway, thank you for joining me on Brackets, Bubbles, and Bid Stealers tonight. I'm sorry about Jonathan not being able to join us. We will be back on Sunday morning.